This episode is sponsored by DS, a team of makers, marketers, and entrepreneurs that help businesses transform their brand experience and unlock growth like never before. Are you a CMO, founder, or business leader looking to level up your brand and marketing? Head over to weareds.com and let's explore what is next for your business. That's weareds.com. Visit us to learn more.
Welcome to Forward Obsessed, where we talk to breakthrough business leaders and rising entrepreneurs about their journeys, origin stories, and aha moments.
Hi, my name is Robert Roach, and I'm the executive producer for Forward Obsessed. That's right, every time Pete and David yell at some guy named Rob off screen to add something to the show notes or make a t-shirt that says some super obscure entrepreneurial inside joke, yeah, they're talking to me. And that's the entire team at Forward Obsessed. 3 people dedicated to bringing you some of the most interesting, insightful, and inspiring stories of entrepreneurial endeavors that we can find. And this year, we had 25 incredible interviews, 25 deep dives into the roller coaster experience of building a company, taking an aha moment, nurturing it into a tangible idea for a business, building a team, getting funding, growing, failing, pivoting, growing again, failing again, exploding, and then who knows? Every single story is different. And yet, our team has been able to tease out some of the through lines from all of these stories, the fundamental truths of entrepreneurship. And we're taking everything we're learning, and we're creating a book, the ultimate field guide to building a business. And next year, we'll be taking the first 50 episodes of Forward Obsessed, and we'll distill this priceless entrepreneurial knowledge into a single book, one that we plan to get into your hands by next summer. So stay tuned. Now, being Forward Obsessed means taking your learnings from the past and applying them to the endeavors of the future with unbending resolve, curiosity, and ambition. And one thing that we have learned is that we have the best fan base ever. Thanks to people like you sharing our episodes and our clips, we've reached over 3 million people in 2023 across all of our channels. And as the year draws to a close, we would like to celebrate you, our outstanding audience. We've decided to award 5 of you a free Forward Obsessed t-shirt, one of the legendary Progress, Pitfalls, and Pivots mugs that you see on every episode, and a signed copy of the Forward Obsessed book when it drops in the next year. In order to be eligible, you have to do the following. Pick out your favorite Forward Obsessed clip from social media and share it to your Instagram, TikTok, or LinkedIn account. Write a post about what this show has done for you and tag us, and you will be in the running for a Forward Obsessed shirt, a mug, and a signed copy of what may be the best book ever written on how to build a company from aha moment to incredible exit. From the entire team here at Forward Obsessed, here in New Haven, Connecticut, we would like to thank you, the viewers and listeners, for your support, your feedback, your energy, and your genuine excitement as you shared with us in the last year. And as a part of our end-of-year tradition, we've decided to compile the top moment from every episode in the last year, as chosen by you, our viewers and listeners, through your engagement. Like last year, it was tough to omit any piece of knowledge that our amazing guests brought to the table, as every episode presents a brilliant perspective on what it means to be an entrepreneur. But I hope you enjoy these clips, take inspiration from these outstanding minds, and step into the new year refreshed and Forward Obsessed.
Some people think they have to be assholes and maybe they build bigger businesses, but I think it catches up to you because your team, they aren't there shoulder to shoulder with you, in my opinion. And I think this goes back to the final point in Good to Great, the level 5 leadership. I always thought great leaders were these larger than life assholes, basically. And the idea that it's professional, how does he describe it? Humility with professional will. I think that's one of the great phrases for motivating people.
I think it was 1974, you couldn't, as a female, you couldn't get credit without a male co-signer. Women were not really to be trusted with money. They needed a guy to sign their paperwork. It wasn't until 1978 there was any kind of protection for pregnancy. in the workplace. I believe that these old systems and old biases have continued to infect the way in which we all view each other, men and women. And I don't mean like it's something men are doing to women. We all do it. There's this idea of the motherhood penalty where there's an unconscious bias towards women of childbearing age that make them perceived as less responsible, less worthy of a promotion, less to be trusted, whether you have kids or not. If a guy is of the same age, he's perceived as more responsible, more trusted. Suddenly COVID happened. Kids are in meetings, dogs are barking, and everybody's still getting their work done. Men actually normalized that. Now I feel like everyone's opening up and being like, yeah, it's okay.
My little brother Gregory passed from a brain tumor at 6 years old. I was 8 at the time. I think I was entering 3rd grade. People still now, 25 plus years later, have brought this up and they're like, how do you have such a positive outlook on it? I was fortunate to be raised around folks who had a strength and an understanding that through that tragedy, we could do and create good for others. From a very young age, we had a scholarship fund in his honor. The recipients were from every walk of life, but there was one undying characteristic, which was this real passion for life and this vigor that was how Gregory lived his life. From a very young age, it's been this philanthropic awareness that no matter what the challenge, you can always turn it into a positive and find some better outlook and something different that can come from it. We can all wallow in our sorrows. I could sit here and I could say, woe is me. Or I could realize that just like everybody else, I put my pants on one leg at a time and I got to tie my shoes and I got to go back to work and try to make this world something better.
The first person I hired, for example, was a bookkeeper. I don't want to freaking do the books.
It sucks because it's the plumbing of a business, but like everything from the bookkeeper to the CFO role just doesn't excite me. I realize that it's so critically important for the business.
I know I have a friend who owns a really large company, but he's still not making any money. And he's like 15 years in and he doesn't have a strong finance person. Slow the hell down. Here's what your numbers actually look like. Let's make some smart financial decisions.
In college, you learn it in your classes, but you don't really pay attention. It's not real. It's not practical. When you start a business, I think the best thing you can do as an entrepreneur early on, I wish I did it way earlier, understanding how to read an income statement, a balance sheet, cash flow statement, how to determine operating profit, all that kind of stuff.
My father went bankrupt when I was 13. They had a shoe business and they bought a shoe factory and styles changed. The factory couldn't make the product and they went through a major bankruptcy when I was 13 years old.
Wow.
That was one of the greatest lessons I learned from that, at least, is never buy a factory.
Do you remember it like distinctly, the conversations that were happening in the house and that kind of thing?
You read now how important family dinner is for your kids and reading to them at night, but family dinner is important. We had family dinners and my father was depressed. And I'd gone up to the factory when I was a kid and run the elevator and those kinds of things. But when your father's staring off into space at dinner and he's usually like the life of the party, you know something's not right. I'll never forget the night my mother said, "Arthur, it's enough, get over it," and like yelled at him, just snap out of it. That was a great lesson. And then I watched him change course at 51 years old, sell the rare Mercedes and use that money and work with my mother and found Edelman Leather, 1981.
Never too late to start again.
No, my brother did the same thing and I'm doing the same thing now, all about the same age.
The first year that I started my PhD training, my father, who was always a guiding light, when I didn't get into medical school, he said, just keep moving, just keep pushing forward, this sort of immigrant mentality. He brought me through every major inflection point in my life. He got metastatic esophageal cancer. It was the weirdest graduate experience because as I learned more about cancer, my dad got sicker and sicker and sicker. And literally 3 months before my MD PhD program, he died. One of the last things he said was, you need to solve this disease. That really galvanized my interest. Fundamentally, these are solvable problems. It's like chess. There are a finite number of moves. Cancer, we can likely cure this disease. We've seen immunotherapy take patients with metastatic melanoma with 6 months to live that are 20 years out. I think the startup world is the way to get that done.
Think of entrepreneurship as a marathon. It's not a sprint, more as an endurance test than an IQ test. You can't do this for a decade or more if you're totally out of balance. If you are, you're going to be multiple times divorced. You're going to be estranged from friends, kids. I don't care if you're the fastest growing, biggest, richest, most profitable. I wrote a case note on work-life integration. I don't always call it balance, but work-life integration. We talk about 5 F's. guess in that case, family, friends, fitness, fun, and faith, trying to keep those non-professional 5 F's alive outside of business. If you don't, I think you can wind up in a place when you're 40, 50, or 60, you're really wealthy, you have a big business, but you're alone and isolated, and you've let these other parts of your life wither.
They say you never see a U-Haul behind a hearse.
Yeah.
Take it with you.
When I moved to Boston, I talked to some guys. They were trying to recruit me to go to be CTO of this company called Buyer Zone. I get the job. One day they're like, this guy who's one of the VCs that invested in this company wants to meet with you. I was like, okay. I go in the building, I go up this elevator. It's the top floor. I've never met this person before. I go into this office, giant desk, there's no chair. And he's sitting there.
It's like a sci-fi movie.
It was the most surreal. It's locked in my mind, right? His first words to me, why should I let you be CTO of my company?
What's going through your mind at that moment?
I was like, what? He's like, did you go to MIT? Because he's a big MIT guy. And I just snapped and I was like, no. I said, I didn't go to MIT. People that go to MIT work for me. I don't work for them. And he was like, he just like, shut up. I love that moment. That was the moment that I was like, the fire was on. That was the moment of, oh, someone told me I can't do something. Yeah. I'm going to do it.
Sometimes fear comes from people feeling they have something to lose. The only thing you have to lose is the opportunity. On my vanity, I have a giant jar of marbles, and I put that jar there when I was about 52 years old. I filled it with marbles, 1 marble for every week I would live, and I'm going to live to be 100. So every weekend I take a marble out of the jar and I discard it. The space in the jar reminds me of how much time is gone. The marbles that remain remind me of how much time I have left and that it's finite. I have a sense of urgency. If you want to do something, you need to do it now, right? In the end, we're all going to die. That's guaranteed. We don't know when, we don't know how, but it's going to happen. This is your shot. So the only thing you have to lose is you lose your shot because you were afraid. So take your shot. What's the worst that can happen? You win or you learn. There's no lose.
I'm probably all of 25, and my job is to fly every week to present to Mr. Gerson. He was an imposing guy. He just wanted to see what we were going to present him. He didn't really want to have some pleasantries. We sat in this dark conference room, and I remember him looking at us, and he said, do you guys actually believe in the work you're presenting today? The creative people are defending their work. I remember them defending to the point where I'm like, I'm way younger than them. I'm like, you guys got to stop. You guys got to listen to him because he's going to tell you what he wants. He looked at us and he said, your work sucks, and your work's not going to drive traffic to my businesses. And if you guys can't drive traffic, I don't need you. If they're unhappy, not only are they going to be unhappy, they're going to tell everyone in their organization that you can't deliver. They're going to tell their friends. This idea where you can phone it in on one client is a pipe dream, because if you take a client, you have to deliver for them, because churning clients is really tough.
In the 1980s, you dressed in a blue suit and a white shirt, and you looked like IBM if you were a software company. I remember one time going down to Johnson & Johnson to make a sales call. Joe Cohen's driving, but we're hungry. We stop at the Vince Lombardi rest stop on the Jersey Turnpike. So we get our hot dog, and I put a ridiculous amount of mustard on my hot dogs. Finally get back to the car. We got to get going. Jump in the car. My hot dog bounces up all over put the hot dog down, run back, clean it off as best I can, come back in the car, jump in the seat. Okay, Joe. Oh.
No, he sat in it.
And Joe says to me, Steve, we're not going to fix this. Let's just go. I learned a good lesson from that. There's nothing like having a great story to break the ice at the beginning of a business meeting.
In the late 90s, or actually through a good part of the 90s, it actually became dangerous to do business in Russia. In the beginning days, it was just sort of crazy, wide open, do whatever you want, and there really wasn't as much of the aggressive grabs for power. I was working with a Russian partner, and we were talking about doing local manufacturing. And I was like, we'll sweat blood for 3 years, we'll get this thing working, and then some guy's gonna come up and say how much you love your kids. There's really no rule of law there to protect you. There was this program called privatization, which was an attempt to put state assets into private hands with the theory that that was going to free things up and get things going. To some extent it did, but the process was not great. First wave of oligarchs came through that.
You hear these things or you meet these people that work for these companies and they're under this oligarch and this oligarch. I never really understood it completely. I just thought they were just gangsters.
They were, but if you have enough money, you no longer are a gangster, right?
I got my first annual performance review. They rated you on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 was best. My boss sat down with me and he goes, "You are our test case for our department to hire somebody straight out of grad school. And you've nailed it. You're great. You're other people in the department. We give you tougher assignments and everything else. You're doing awesome." Then it got around to the number on the form and they rated me a 3, which meant met expectations. I said, "Excuse me, I can't accept that based on what you just told me." He goes, "Well, we thought you were going to be awesome and you were awesome, so you met expectations. How can I ever exceed expectations if that's the way you do this?"
A second MBA on what not to do in companies.
Oh, I say that a lot. I've said that many times. My time at American taught me how not to run a business.
The reason I did chemical engineering is asked my grandfather. He said, if you don't know what you want to do, just do this chemical engineering stuff because it's very broad. It'll teach you how to think and you can do whatever you want afterwards. It was exactly the right advice. My takeaway from chemical engineering was I loved process control, process design. You got to make a distillation plant. You break it down into what they call unit operations, which are individual steps in the big problem. So now the problem is tractable. I reused many times. Even my first company, the way that you would design like the data transformation was unit operations in a diagram. I also believe very firmly good artists copy and great artists steal. There is no product that's properly new in the world.
Everything's derivative, right?
Everything is a mashup. You gotta just pull from whatever and bring it together to get stuff done.
So we had raised 1.2 million. So now we have investors. Now it's very, very real. That's where I started to feel a lot of the pressure. Most of it was probably myself putting the pressure on me. I'm also managing people now. I don't really like managing people. I like creating and figuring it out. I also don't want to fail. I'm creating videos every day, so I'm making a lot of noise and putting a lot of pressure on myself. That's when I kind of fell into this like hole where I'm taking Adderall now and just going down this path of bad habits and got into this substance abuse issue. I think a lot of founders maybe don't talk about it, but it really happens. And it started to like really take a toll on me.
Was it Adderall because of ADD or ADHD?
I definitely think I have ADHD. Should you really medicate yourself with effectively meth? I was taking it in a way where what happens with me is it makes me incredibly antisocial. I don't want to talk to anyone. When I do that, I like become like a zombie. Whereas I actually think my superpower is the social element and I like being able to talk and express myself and people see the passion. I'm literally taking away the best thing that I have and then becoming arguably the worst version of myself. Once you go down that spiral, then it's like you can't sleep. You're kind of on this like roller coaster of up, down, up, down. That really takes a toll on you.
How do you think your team was interpreting that pressure on you and who you were becoming?
I felt like I ended up being the weakest link. I was the one that would be canceling team meetings, moving team meetings. I was unresponsive. I kind of looked around and I was like, man, the team is firing on all cylinders. They're awesome. I was like, man, something has to change. I'm going to a treatment place in South Florida. I hit up my CTO and I was like, I have to do this. You have to run the team right now.
Crazy brave of you, man. A lot of people can't do that on their own.
That was the other frustrating thing. I was like, God, everyone thinks everything's fine. It's not fucking fine. I'm not living up to my best self.
You get acquired. I'm assuming the wire hit and that's it? Did you have to stay with the company or what was that moment like?
So wire hit, it was awesome. I'm literally like living in this sober house with these guys. There's like curfew and stuff. I'm like, hey, you guys want to go get a steak dinner? That was what I did. I like took the guys in the house out and we got a steak dinner. It's like funny looking back how anticlimactic the celebration was.
We've heard from different entrepreneurs that exiting is a huge headache and somewhat bothersome to a lot of people and very stressful.
Negotiating the deal I thought was stressful. The whole time I was stressed, but I was able to manage it because I had just gone through that program. If I hadn't gone through that, like there's zero chance I would have been able to manage that process.
What do you think is the biggest thing you learned about yourself when you had that 2-month treatment?
I learned that I thrive under structure. Basically, someone else was telling me what to do every single day, and it was fucking awesome. It's like therapy boot camp. I hadn't done therapy, and I have known that I needed to do therapy for so long. I learned that I thrive under structure, and I actually need structure. I also learned that it gave me more confidence in myself. I know when to raise my hand and say I need help. A lot of people are maybe afraid to ask for help. It showed me that I know when I need to ask for help. I'm capable of asking for help, and then also whatever challenge is then put in front of me, I think I can figure it out because I am not afraid to ask for help.
I was experimenting on Craigslist really just as a prankster. It all started with a experimentation with video. The digital video landscape was just starting to dominate. Like TikTok didn't exist. The idea that UGC could be valuable was like very novel at the time, and video was just so in demand. If there's so much demand, why is there not as much supply that was capably being put in the hands of marketers? I posted on Craigslist a $20 bid to have somebody basically smoke a series of cigarettes. The truth is that it was like that full pack of cigarettes. I had 77 videos of people smoking an entire pack of cigarettes for the chance of making $20. The math blew my mind because I was like, if I can count on some median viewership for all these videos, which I own and didn't even have to pay to own, then we can invite buyers to subsidize that cost and we can share in the transaction value that throws through the marketplace. I was like, this is it.
You just had proof of concept.
I loved it. And so everything we did from that moment on was kind of reverse engineering the hack that was Craigslist.
The key lesson was actually with M&A that didn't happen. Forbes published an article about us. One of their contributors approached to us and he said like, hey, I know a company who is interested in your product, a Russian company. Day 7, they told us that, hey, we would like to acquire your company. We have just a few things. First of all, you need to come back to Russia. Secondly, you need to increase your revenue. Then they started their due diligence process. And it took like literally 9 months. They investigated almost everything. And
colonoscopy.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 weeks before the actual signing the contract, they fired their head of M&A.
Oh, geez.
He just disappeared.
Yeah, disappeared.
Russia, that's a problem.
Yeah. He's in the trunk of an old Mercedes.
2 weeks before the deal, it disappears, and you need to go back and to keep working on it.
What did that feel like for you? Were you just shitting your pants? Like, oh my God.
You are completely lost. You don't understand what is going on because 9 months, you were in a position when it will happen very soon. You just need to complete all this checklist. Yeah. And then you realize that it will not gonna happen. And you start blaming. You can't blame yourself. You start blaming your partner, and he starts blaming you. This is a kind of hard period. If you expect to make an exit and it doesn't happen, you feel yourself lost.
It's an emotional roller coaster.
Fractures the partnership. Where you felt lost, and as a result of it, that puts stresses and tensions on your co-founder partnership. It's a hard to recover from thing.
We increased our sales. Acquired customers that we were not able to handle. The lesson is, if you don't see money on your bank account, the deal is not closed and you need to do business as usual, nothing else.
No touchdown dance till the check clears. A lot of people believe in brute force, right? You break something because you're trying to brute force it instead of being much more precise about what you're doing.
In the world of rowing, there's this moment, it's called swing. It doesn't last long and it doesn't come often. It's a moment that describes the perfect harmony and synchronicity of a crew when everyone is flowing together, catching the water with their blades together, applying the power together, and then extracting from the water. And when you achieve that in a boat, it's almost spiritual. It just is a perfect application of the power curve, and the boat actually gets effortlessly light. It's also a point in when the boat is going the very fastest.
Wow.
So not only do you want to apply power together, but then you want to do everything together so you're not slowing the boat down.
Last Mile is technology training inside prison. I've spent over 500 days in prison, never committed a crime. And I had a friend who was doing some mentoring in San Quentin. San Quentin is a very well-known prison outside of San Francisco. She said, I've got these guys that are asking me about business. Can you just come up one night and talk to them? I'm like, no, why would I come in prison? A, they're not going to understand what I'm talking about. And B, it's prison. And I finally relented. San Quentin is a very ominous place. To get to the classroom, you have to walk through the gates across the prison yard is at night into this classroom. I walk in and there's about 50 guys in there. Incarcerated men in San Quentin, all dressed in blue. I started talking and I was going to present and then go home. 3 hours later, I'm not home yet. This presentation turned into a conversation. What I saw in those men was what I saw in many of the founders that pitched me. The something in their eye and the questions that they asked me. I had several guys hand me business plans that they wrote with a prison pencil. Finally, I get to show this to somebody. I was completely blown away, and I went home that night, and Beverly was obviously concerned. I walk in the door. You can't believe what I saw. We're going to start a technology incubator inside San Quentin. You need to come in and see what I saw. We're going to go in and teach an entrepreneurship class that we're going to create. So for 2 years, 2 nights a week, we went into San Quentin and taught this class. In 2012, we had the first demo day in a California prison. We had 6 guys pitch their pitches. In San Quentin, there's a chapel there that holds about 350. It was full of people. We had venture capital friends of mine and media. CNN was there. None of these guys had ever pitched or did any public speaking, and all of them knocked it out of the park.
In blue, or did they get to wear?
No, in blue.
In the blues?
Oh, yeah, in blues.
My first experience as a CEO was when I was around 16 years old. My dad was diagnosed with cancer. Within 3 months, went from 180, 90 pounds to about 90 when he died. The night before he died, he told me a story about a building he refurbished in Providence, Rhode Island. He was refurbishing the building, and so he hired this famous artist to paint the side of the building, these big, beautiful bay windows. It's still there today. It's a national landmark. He said, I'm going to die soon, and you're going to have a choice to look at all these situations and feel bad for yourself and just look at all these obstacles around you and not find a way forward. Or you can imagine where you need to get to and make it happen. I think that's what we are as entrepreneurs, right? We see windows where other people see brick walls. It's tough to remain in that mindset because there's so many challenging things that happen to you as an entrepreneur. But if you can look at those things as opportunities, the whole world is like your oyster. My first experience of a CEO was when I was 16 because after that he died. Electricity was being shut off. We didn't have enough money for food. I was working nonstop in high school to help pay the bills. As an early entrepreneur, you're oftentimes burning more money than you're making. We were definitely the case. My mom was sick and there were suicide attempts. It was a real challenge for a long time. For me, moving forward, recognizing these brick walls as opportunities as new challenges came up. They didn't seem to be as big of a brick wall as that initial challenge of my father passing.
Both my parents are Holocaust survivors. My dad was born in a small village in Poland, and in 1941, when he was 11 years old, the Nazis came into his village of 2,000 people. Half were Jewish. The last time my father saw his mother, he got pushed out of the second story of a movie theater when they were all getting killed. His mother was there with 2 brothers and a sister, and his father and 1 brother were already in the woods, and she said to him, I want you to live. The world's gonna someday need you. I'm pushing you out of the second story of this theater, and you're going to go into the woods. You're going to go find your father and brother, and never forget to tell the world what's happened to us. Another mother saw what was happening, and she threw her 8-year-old son out the window. While the 2 boys fell in the tall grass in this movie theater, there was a German soldier with his machine gun on the corner that looked at my father, looked at his mother in the window, and turned the other way. We all have choices. We can choose good. We can lead with love. First of all, that comes from my dad. He could have hate in his heart, but he chose love and forgiveness. We're all imperfect. If you want to find fault in anyone, you can. It's better to look at the good in people.
When pain goes beyond 6 months, for the majority of people, 85 to 90%, the issue is actually in the brain. There's nothing wrong with the body. It's a hard thing for most people to swallow, especially if you've been through a lot and you've tried a lot of different things. So I heard that, I read that, and I was like, that is nonsense. 99.9% skeptical, but there was a little bit of me that was like, this doctor's talking about people who go through really difficult life experiences are predisposed to developing chronic pain. We have this thing called a nervous system. It connects brain, body, all in between. 52 miles of nerves run in each of us. Incredible complexity in the nervous system. The nervous system is basically in charge of regulating 30 different organ systems, from our breathing, our heart rate, digestive. It reacts and responds to our fight or flight states. When you're in a constant state of threat or hypervigilance, your nervous system actually gets heightened. It gets hypersensitive. I went through a lot of this stuff when I was younger. I was in this kind of constant state of threat, and so my nervous system now has this pattern so that next time I'm in that state, it quickly jumps back up to that heightened state. It's a form of trauma. Brain-created pain. Very real, but the region of the brain that takes over, those pathways become learned, and it keeps firing those pathways.
But wires together, right?
Exactly. And it gets stronger and it gets faster. And then the pain itself is also a trauma. When people are in pain, you're always thinking about it. You're always worried about it. I was trying some basic meditations, some basic body scanning. This is one of the practices that you should try if you think you have what we call neuroplastic pain. I was lying down in meditation because I couldn't sit up for more than a few minutes. A body scan is nothing special. I was listening to a guided audio. I'd been doing this for a few weeks. I was scanning my body. As always, there was this pain in my lower back. And then when I got to that spot in my lower back, the pain shifted. It moved to my shoulder while I was looking at it. And I was like, I read about this. This is a really good sign that the pain is actually a neuroplastic. It's brain created. So the brain is actually switching the pathway. And there's some really good science around why that happens. I'm onto something here. After a long journey, started to find some recovery from these symptoms. And so that's where Menda Health was born a few years later. 2 studies were published on this brain-first treatment called pain reprocessing therapy. They took a group of 151 patients with 10 years of back pain. After 4 weeks, 2/3 were pain-free, just seeing a therapist who's trained in this. And the pain didn't come back after a year with no intervention in between. So 66% of people walking out pain-free, just seeing a therapist, no drugs, no side effects. This is incredible stuff. And this is a randomized controlled trial that was published.
If working hard was the variable, my uncle would be the rich guy on this podcast right now. Yet he was poor his whole life. Worked hard. I remember vividly my uncle stopping me one day. He's alcoholic, brilliant chess player, taught me to play chess. Just one of those weird, brilliant savant, alcoholic, biker gang looking guys. He stopped me one day. He was probably drunk. He says, I go to work every day, I work hard. Some guy I hate shows up in a suit, checks on me, makes sure I'm doing my job and whatever. And he's like, please don't grow up and be me. You need to be that guy. As much as I hate that guy, you need to be that guy. I'm processing going, do I defend him and go, no? Or is what he's saying true? Why is he saying this? Where is he coming from? And I'm like, he's right. That was the day I realized hard work wasn't the only variable. He was admitting I screwed up. Like everybody else in the family, we drop out of high school. He's like, I screwed up. He hit a point in his life where he figured that out.
Go back in your mind. I want you to remember that moment when the wire hit. What was it like for you?
I'll never forget it. My wife and I were in our basement, started bawling, man, started crying. It was just such a relief. With them ugly, snotty cries, man, it was just this release. Holy crap, we did it. It was worth it. All of that sacrifice, all of that struggle was worth it. We downed a whole bottle of champagne in probably like 15 minutes. There's a couple of my really close friends that come up with each other. It's high school, college and stuff like that, and the inside joke goes, you look like Dave Chappelle or whatever, right? There's one of those memes where Dave Chappelle is holding a boatload of money. I'm rich, bitch. I literally, in the group chat, I sent it to all my closest boys. As soon as I did that, they were like, oh shit, you sold the company, And I was just like, check the news tomorrow.
That's amazing. That's an amazing story.
I actually was unemployed for a few months. I went to the New Jersey unemployment office. My dad took me, and I said to my dad, if it doesn't work out, like if I don't find a job, I can't pay rent in the city anymore. Like I can just move home, right? And he said, no. He said, you can't move home. I'm like, what do you mean?
It's a real G.
No, you're on your own. Like,
welcome to the world, son. Figure it out.
It was the kick in the ass I think that I needed.
I'm curious here. I fucking hate coddle culture. Now that I'm a new dad, I'm thinking about the leadership principles that I want to bestow to my son. What do you think would have happened to you had your dad said, oh yeah, it didn't work out. You just come back, move home, son. How do you think that moment would have changed your career?
I don't know if that was a hard thing for him to do or not. I don't even think it was that hard of a thing for me to hear as much as it was like, oh yeah, like, of course I've got to go do this. As a parent now, it must have been hard. I would imagine it'd be hard for me to tell my kids, no, you can't come home. You got to go figure it out. I love that he did it. I'm fortunate that it all worked out the way that it did.
That's the grit builder right there. Yeah. That moment is a grit builder moment.
Thank you for listening to Forward Obsessed. Please share this episode, subscribe, and leave a review on your podcast app. If you have feedback or suggestions for our next guest, visit us at forwardobsessed.com. If you want to dive deeper into every interview, subscribe to our Substack at forwardobsessed.substack.com. Also, find us on Instagram or TikTok at forwardobsessed to see all the best moments from every episode. This episode was produced by Robert Roach from District Studios in New Haven, Connecticut. If you would like to learn more about the team that makes this show possible, visit digitalsurgeons.com.